Well, I made a big mistake for such a long time, sleeping on the Rocky Balboa movies. Holy shit, are these something spectacular. In case you've been living under a rock like me this whole time, Rocky is a movie franchise that tells the story of a punch-drunk boxer that starts from nothing and becomes the world heavyweight champion multiple times. This is a series made by Sylvester Stallone, one of the big action heroes from the 80s to 90s, along with Schwarzenegger. However, this is a series that is also just a labor of love from Stallone's mind. The quintessential underdog story that inspired so many references in pop culture for years yet to come. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about Rocky 1 through 6. Specifically, I'm leaving the Creed movies out of this list because, well, those movies aren't even really about Rocky. I mean, they have him in the movies, but the story isn't solely about him. I'm more so talking about the journey Rocky Balboa goes through in his own movies. So I'm sure eventually at some point I will be going through the Creed movies in a later video at a later date, but right now we're talking about Rocky Balboa. Rocky begins with a low-life boxer who works as a part-time collector for his loan shark boss. He is eventually given a shot at the world title by champion Apollo Creed, who believes that it would be a good way to make some serious cash by making an underdog story for the audience to enjoy. Throughout the movie, Rocky develops a relationship with a girl named Adrian and a father-son dynamic with his trainer Mickey, taking him on a journey to become the best of the best. The general theme of this movie is essentially overcoming adversity, rising against all the odds, and never giving up when things look bleak. I also want to talk about the music, and holy shit is the music amazing. Going the Distance, I cannot tell you how many times I have played this song over and over and over again, and how many times this song has been locked in my fucking brain. I swear, it is one of the most inspirational, motivating pieces I've ever heard in my life. It's the theme that plays when Rocky is fighting Apollo Creed in the first movie. When Apollo knocks him down, he gets back up, and you can just see the life and the soul get sucked out of Apollo. He thinks to himself, why won't this Italian motherfucker stay down? I don't understand.
6, 7, 8, 9. Apollo can't believe it.
It's such a beautiful moment too, and it just shows the tenacity. The music captures everything. The sequel is a direct aftermath of the first fight. Essentially, Apollo wants a rematch because he didn't feel that the first win wasn't satisfying. He felt that he won by a technicality, and Rocky just got lucky. He wants a chance to prove that he can still beat the Italian stallion. This movie plays with the idea of pride and fighting for yourself. Rocky tries to hold regular everyday jobs, and he even tries doing commercials after his success, but it just doesn't work out. He only knows how to fight. That's just who he is. He's a fighter. And he has to provide for his upcoming family, and he accepts Apollo's challenge, much to Adrian's dismay, but then reconsiders it once she goes into labor and is in a coma. This section of the movie is extremely powerful, showing the bond that Rocky and Adrian have, the true love that they have. And when Rocky is just sitting beside her the whole time, he's sitting there learning to read and trying to talk to her so that she can wake up. It's such an emotional scene, man. And when she wakes up and says, win. Oh my god, man, it's such a beautiful fucking moment.
Win.
What are we waiting for? Take this!
Rocky 3 picks up a bit after the second movie, with this new antagonist, Clubber Lang, portrayed by Mr. T. Oh yeah, and Hulk Hogan shows up too, and he whoops Rocky's ass. It's pretty funny. Clubber Lang represents the hunger and the thirst for power and glory, something that Rocky had in the first movie, when he was much younger. And the thing about this is that it's sort of a weird, strange way where Rocky is essentially fighting a corrupt asshole version of his younger self. He gets shit on in the first match, though, due to Mickey's death affecting his mind and his confidence. Apollo returns to train Rocky because he wants to show Clubber Lang business, I guess. I don't know. It's not really explained too much. Apollo just wants to train Rocky so he can make Rocky better again. This movie explores Balboa's self-doubt and his fears. essentially going into his mind and really helping him overcome his mental state. It's essentially a man versus self type story. There's a terrific scene on the beach where she's essentially giving him a big ass pep talk and trying to get him to open up about how he feels in his mental state. Once she gives out this awesome speech, it essentially motivates him again and makes him train a lot harder than he used to. This even develops a good friendship between Apollo and Rocky, which is really fucking nice. Rocky comes back, fights Clubber Lang one more time and defeats him, obtaining the championship title once again. Honestly, I think Rocky 3 is probably the best movie of the franchise. Not only is it filmed well, it's written well, it's also got probably the best fight in the whole series. It's got one of the most meaningful speeches and the most meaningful moments with Rocky. Okay, so this is where we get to the weird territory of these movies being somewhat bad. Now, I want to preface that none of these movies are actually bad movies. There's just some of them are weaker than others. And Rocky 4, its story is kind of weak, but for different reasons. So, the plot of this movie is Apollo gets killed by a boxer named Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren. And, he's pretty fucking caked up. Not to mention, Ivan Drago is essentially a genetically and physically engineered creation by the Russians to be this supreme being. Now, Apollo challenges him to a fight because of his ego, and he wants to essentially prove himself, and yada yada. It's the whole fucking Rocky thing. So the thing about this movie that I find the weakest part of it is just the antagonist. The thing about what made the first 3 Rocky so special was the antagonist, was the obstacle that Rocky had to overcome. Ivan Drago doesn't inherently have a personality or a character. He's essentially just this beefcake that just kills Apollo. And that's about it. I mean, you get a really good training montage about him, but he doesn't really have much of a personality like Clubber Lang or Apollo. Clubber Lang had this fierce-ass personality that was awesome. He was an asshole, but at least he had the strength to back up his personality. Drago doesn't even have a personality to back up his strength as a character. Now, he does have one of the coldest lines, though, in the whole franchise.
If he dies, he dies.
A third of this movie is just insert pop song and training montages. I could definitely do without some of the politics in this movie as well. It essentially feels like a bunch of anti-Russian propaganda, and all that stuff is, I mean, I understand it's a product of its time, but, I mean, it didn't have to go so hard on the whole political angle of the movie. I also want to say that the final fight was awesome. It was really good. And the thing about these Rocky movies is that every fight in these movies are really well choreographed and awesome. I will say that Rocky 4 has a lot of flash and flair, but the substance in it isn't really super deep in this movie specifically. It's just essentially Rocky wants revenge. Not much story there. It's more so just a training montage movie. Not horrible, but it's definitely the weakest story of the whole franchise. Rocky 5. Now, I know this is considered to be the bad Rocky movie in the franchise, but I honestly like this one more than the previous one, because it actually told a pretty decent story. And when I say decent with a capital D, because about half the story is really good, and the other half just gets kind of dumb. Again, this isn't exactly a horrible thing, it just puts Rocky out of character in some ways. So after the fight with Drago, Rocky suffers a lot of blows to the head and essentially gets this irreparable brain damage, causing him to no longer be able to box. Now, after the fight, he even has these weird little moments where he's having these brain issues and talking about Mickey when he's actually talking to Adrian. He's saying things like, "We did it, Mickey, we did it, when he's actually talking to Adrian. It's actually kind of sad. So he decides to retire and just live his life. But, however, Paulie essentially messed up their money situation and gave the accountant all the money, and the taxes didn't get paid. I don't really understand all this shit, honestly. All you really need to know is that Rocky and his family are destitute now, and so now they gotta go back to the slums. Now Rocky has to go back to work at the old gym and find a way to make ends meet. Now, throughout the movie, there is an antagonist named George Duke Washington, or George Washington Duke. I don't remember the order of his name. It's really weird. But he's essentially this promoter that's trying to get Rocky to fight, and Adrian has to protect him from George Washington Duke because Rocky is not mentally well to make these decisions, and he also still wants to fight. There's also another portion of the plot where he's training this kid named Tommy the Machine Gun. He's just this beefcake kid that Rocky trains, grows to love, yada yada, and then Rocky's kid has his own little arc. And this movie is like juggling like 3 different plots at the same time. And the Rocky Jr. Portions of the movie where he's essentially getting bullied in school. He's this pampered little kid that gets bullied, and it's okay story, but it just feels strange that Rocky would just abandon his family to train some random kid. Overall, this movie is just kind of but it has this really awesome street fight scene that takes Rocky back to his roots as a brawler. Every time I watch the Mickey scene, it gets me choked up like a goddamn porn star.
And nature is smarter than people think. Little by little, we lose our friends, we lose everything. We keep losing and losing till we say, you know, oh, what the hell am I living around here for? I got no reason to go on. But with you, kid, boy, I got a reason to go on. And I'm going to stay alive. And I will watch you make good.
And I'll never leave you.
And I'll never leave you until that happens. Because when I leave you, you'll not only know how to fight, you'll be able to take care of yourself outside the ring, too. Is that okay?
It's okay.
And if you ever get hurt, and you feel that you're going down, this little angel is going to whisper in your ear. He's going to say, get up, you son of a bitch! Because Mickey loves you. Okay?
Thanks, Mick.
All right.
Rocky 6. Okay, so this is probably the most beautiful one of them all. This film has so much heart and recaptures the same energy as the first 2 movies did. And it is extremely reminiscent of them, aging up the characters from the first movie. Like, little Marie. She's still living in Philly as a bartender. Rocky and her share a scene in the first movie where he tells her to hang around the right people or else she'll become like them. Not to mention, he even makes a statement in the beginning of the movie saying, the longer you stay in one place, the more you become it. And she is a prime example of that. The film feels like it's telling the audience everything that Stallone has learned about life through his experiences, especially in the greatest monologue he tells to his son about life in general. The most powerful scene in the movie, and maybe even the franchise, honestly.
But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that.
Oh yeah, but when it comes to plot, it's basically just a character study where Rocky just wants to have one more fight and let out all of the internal frustrations and all of the anger he has that the world has brought to him. And the champion, Mason Dixon, is not really an antagonist like the others. He's more so just an obstacle for Rocky to overcome and let his rage out. Not a bad character, nor a real important one though. I also find it funny that a big portion of this movie's plot is driven by a simulated AI fight, which is essentially just a what-if scenario if these 2 boxers in the prime fight. Rocky's relationship with his son is a focal point too, but I really wish that we saw them more on screen together. Marie and Rocky's relationship is really nice and wholesome, sort of like an uncle and niece or a grandpa and grandkid type of dynamic that got going. Good movie, nice ending to Rocky's story, but man, I wish they didn't kill Adrian off screen. What makes Rocky such a magical series is just the heart that it has. Not only the character, but the stories it tells. I know that boxing is a main focus, but it's more about the journey the characters go through and the struggles that life throws at them. Never giving up on your goals and dreams. The speech that Rocky 6 perfectly summarizes the entire series with. Like he says, it's not about how hard you can hit. That's about how hard you can get hit and still keep going. The characters feel so real, and this world has such a freaking amazing charm to it. Rocky was always about going the distance and proving your worth to the world, regardless if you win or lose, showing that hard work and tenacity is a necessary requirement if you want to succeed in anything. And hey, maybe even a little bit of luck might be on your side as well. The music already tells you what these movies are about, playing the trumpets of victory. I originally decided to watch these movies so I could gather some inspiration for the Punch-Out video I made a while back. And I gotta say, not only has this done wonders for my content, but it's also done wonders for my mind. Nothing is more motivating than see somebody overcome the odds that are stacked against them with everything is telling you no, and you still keep going. That's a champion's mindset, and that is what Rocky is, the champion. Now go watch these movies, they're great.